Well, hello again. This is my best attempt so far at encouraging you to enjoy the cycles and seasons of life's progress. Behind me is a rudimentary map of all the hours of the day represented by colors. So the cool, sunset, evening, nighttime, midnight, 2 a.m., 4 a.m., sunrise, 10 a.m., more or less, 10 to 12. So sunrise, 6 to 8, for a boy, heart, 8 to 10, 10 to 12, midday, 1 girl, 3 girl, 5 girl, happens to be 12 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6. That starts the process over again at sunset, which is 6. Now, this is a sequence of experiences available to us throughout the day. Now, to help your comprehension of it, this also has the 4 seasons that utilize sets of 3. So you have the autumn season that has 3 different months that correspond to 3 different colors. These are the 3 grandmothers from the mother's side of the family. They're married, interesting enough, to the 3 grandfathers on the mother's side of the family. These 6 correspond to the autumn and the winter. These 6 correspond to the mother's side of the family. Then you get the father's side of the family with another 6. This is more of the spring and summer, or the outside, the materialization social process. The other autumn, winter, usually cooler, inward seeking, and so on. This is a sequence of the entire map. In the work that we're doing, cycles and seasons, we're taking 1 month just to do one of them and to explore what it feels like to just do the first month of autumn as it corresponds to a gland, organ, body system, feeling, color, and so on. All of these are fruit. I know that's an odd way to consider them, but every single one of these has a skill set of consciousness. Many skills that are available to us if we seek them to develop them. So I would like to, as much as possible, map some of the ones that are here so that you can be aware that you use them all the time. But your development of the desire to experience them is increasing your ability to feel them. So the very first month, called the month of 2 girl, which is related to mother's side of the family, it's related to kidney, bladder, the water system. These 3 grandmothers, they correspond to nearly all of the cleaning of the body. Kidney, bladder, spleen, bowels, all of the things relative to cleaning. It also merges into the liver on the other side. It also goes into the skin. It removes through breathing and the lungs. So it's a whole process of purification. So these 3 grandmothers on the mother's side of the family are all designed to be accessed through a single point. Now that single point corresponds to the first month of the autumn season. Now it's always with us throughout every season. So if I could, I would put a blue line through the middle of all of this just to remind you to take this first one with you. Now, that first month of the autumn is about you. It's about your existence in the world as you. And ultimately, it is your existence in the world as your authentic existence was before, during, and after your conception. So where were you before your original conception into the world? During that conception, there are experiences that occur. After the conception, obviously, you have the cycle of birth, you have early childhood, and then you have a cycle that looks like this of 64 years. So all of these are cycles of years. Yes, there's literally cycles of the year that operate like cycles of a lifetime. Well, I'll go into that another time. This pattern here is holographic, meaning that as you appreciate the existence of each one of these hours or each one of these months, it also corresponds to chakra systems, minerals, vitamins, glands, and organs, so that your willingness to feel one at a time, especially when you learn to link it to the ones that follow. So let me show you this in a slightly different way. So it's a different picture for you. I love these pictures. Let me show you. Here is the linear experience of the timeline of a day or a lifetime or all the months of the year laid out in a systematic model. And each one of these key words, they have to do with some of the skill sets available in that place. I'm not going to go over it in detail in the moment. What I'm saying is that when you progress from one to the other, you'll find that they're linked together. And one of the more beautiful ways of visualizing that is it might look like this. In this one, you see these figure eights all around you. By the way, these lines inside of each band corresponds to glands, organs, and body systems and their codependent relationship to other glands, organs, and body systems. This is basically, these are individual attributes, and these are individual relationships to ancestors in your family tree. This is the genetics of your family tree that was granted to you or transmitted to you at conception. So part of the process is that we learn how to appreciate that it exists while also taking on the responsibility to examine it closely for what is ours to experience versus what's not ours to experience. Now, the ability to be able to distinguish something that belongs to somebody else really requires that we develop a certain skill set. Now, this skill set happens to be the ability to be able to feel. Feeling simultaneously coupled to awareness. Feeling is the ability to be able to distinguish the feelings of other people's feelings inside of self. So empathy becomes a skill set of learning how to go into the feelings that we have and to distinguish which part of those feelings belong to us versus which part of these feelings were transmitted to us from our family tree, from our cultural environment, from our family, into our neighborhood, country, race, culture, and so on. We have received enormous amounts of memory from other people individually and collectively. This is a natural process. Now, also what's part of the natural process is whatever is contained within the memory of our soul must automatically learn to be repeated. It'll automatically repeat for us, for example, our fingerprint, which doesn't change throughout a lifetime, and our blood type, which doesn't change throughout a lifetime. But we also have to learn that there are innate attributes that belong to us, but there are acquired memory processes which are not really ours, but were imprinted in us from our parents and grandparents and so on. So this part of this process of what we're going through by being able to take 1 month at a time not only develops a skill set, it removes part of the process given to us by that ancestor. Let me show you another graphic. This is a graphic that moves from one side of the family to the other side of the family. In the process of going through this movement, we access the side of the family responsible for giving us these attributes. There are attributes from the mother's side of the family which are different than the attributes given to us by the father's side of the family. Now, the intriguing part of it is they have different magnitudes of order. So inside these 3 different sets of bands, to me, these are like locks or gates. So we have the ability to expand these attributes, and these 3 gates have to do with self, others, and all. So every one of these attributes, we can apply it on self, others, and all. If we learn how to be able to create the opportunity to appreciate the very first month. What I mean by that is the very first step into the beginning of the process of how to do this is accentuated by the willingness to appreciate the first month of autumn. First month of autumn is the entry into the mother's side of the family. And from my experience, the mother's side of the family, or my own intrinsic feminine, determines the outcome of my father's side of the family. It's true that things generated on the father's side go into my mother's side's memory, but it's my mother's side that primarily creates the patterns and the paradigm to build my body according to a body type, but to also build up my law of attraction. So my mother's side contains the social emotional memories of my family tree. And by the nature of replication, whatever I have inside me genetically, my physical body and my social parameters are created. So my physical constitution may have attributes that are related to me specifically, but they're also influenced by what's happening on my father's side of the family. That sounds like a lot. I realize that. So the ability to be able to change our contribution has to do with the willingness to submerge ourselves into the feminine forces from the mother's side of the family and to distinguish each part of them as being individual. One more graphic. Let me finish up with this graphic because it's easier sometimes to see the sequences of the colors as they're related to the seasons of the year. For me to change what's inside of me is to bring my attention to the mother's side of the family. Why? Because the interior feminine of things invisible to me, from my interior body chemistry, my interior feeling mechanisms, my interior feminine ultimately affects and expresses how my masculine world is going to be. So whatever I'm holding inside my mother's side of the family becomes an expression of my health, my social relationships, my success in the world. That has everything to do with my physical, emotional outcome. Now, part of the emotional outcome is that it facilitates the law of attraction. The law of attraction is a natural law designed to return to me the opportunity to re-experience what's held within my feminine. That just means anything that comes to me is connected to something inside me. So the opportunity to experience the personal responsibility to feel one's feminine. So I'm saying that the opportunity to experience that starts on the first month of autumn. Now, this recording is occurring within the first week of the first month of autumn. So I'm suggesting that you take your time to spend the entire month increasing your opportunity to feel you. And the way that this works, according to my own experience, is that the sincere desire to want to feel is increasable, meaning that from now on, what we'll ideally be doing is continually increasing our capacity to feel. We can feel more and feel more and feel more. Ultimately, there's no end to the increase of our capacity to feel. In order to do this, each one of these places has memory from the family tree that needs to be felt, accessed, and then in some way or another appreciated through empathy, that we now determine that there are feelings inside of us that we need to experience. And sometimes we experience them and we realize that they were imprinted by our parents or our grandparents, and they didn't actually belong to us originally. Then we find out that oftentimes those feelings that we did receive from our ancestry and our parents, they influenced us to make will-based choices. Now, the difference is any will-based choice made by me can only be removed by me. That's my responsibility from now on, is I have to deal with every one of my will-based choices. But many of the choices given to us by our family tree were put there before we had the awareness of our own will, and they infiltrated our genetic code, and they're giving us opportunities to feel things, but oftentimes that can be an old residual addictive process of some form or another, and it can have a strong effect on our impulses. But eventually we need to be able to discern that, transmute that, or return it to whom it belongs. So part of the process is first, the first month, feel and increase the capacity to feel. In the second month, we learn how to transform or use a metamorphosis or release or forgive. And that third month is we also learn how to use faith-based experiences or divine guides to help us go through the process. I know that's a lot to consider, but I'm just giving you the encouragement to move forward. If you end up with specific questions on one part of this, feel free to ask. Talk to you soon.